Hi everyone, my name is Emily and I'm the young adult librarian at the Rock Island Public Library. And today I have two books for you that are both available through our Libby app. So if you want to check that out, I'll play with this a little bit. Just all you need is your library card number. And I will say I learn new stuff about Libby all the time because I was helping a patron last week get set up with audiobooks, and I found that I had accidentally set my Libby account so that I was not seeing all the books that were available. I was just seeing like YA titles, and even then, like, I don't know, some things like crossover things where like it's an adult title with YA appeal, that wasn't coming up. So it was good to find that out because now I can see more stuff available through Libby that I was not seeing before. And today I have two books for you. I think they're both available right now, but the deal with Libby is if something is checked out, you may have to put it on hold, wait for it to come back. And this first book is Not Your Princess. And this is a book, the subtitle is Voices of Native American Women, and it is a collection of art and poetry and all these different writings by Native American women, and how just different, here we go, different experiences that shape what that means, what it means to be an Indigenous person, a woman in particular. And the photography here, the words, you know, this is like the authors, the editors, Lisa Charlie Boy and Mary Beth Leatherdale. They have collected, you know, all these different sort of experiences and words written by different creators, and it's a really beautiful book. It's just sort of a combination of lots of different things, and if you like poetry, if you like art, I think this is a perspective that maybe a lot of us don't know, or, you know, we don't necessarily have, you know, you understand sort of objectively that in the United States and in Canada, there is a huge and really kind of terrifying epidemic of Indigenous women going missing. But this is from the perspective of people who have to live with that fear, you know, who understand that there's one section that's even titled, It Could Have Been Me. And there's this certainly awareness of a shared like intergenerational trauma and history, and like in this one, Reclaiming Indigenous Women's Rights. This is like a short essay that talks about how, you know, historically, in Indigenous culture, Indigenous women and girls are sacred, known as life givers, as independent, as autonomous, as decision makers. Early explorers, traders, missionaries, and settlers wrote about Indigenous women and girls, describing them as inferior and sexualizing them. There is power in language. Altering, diminishing, and transforming Indigenous women and girls' spaces and places within the nation, tribe, territory, community, and family has sown and set the seeds and firmly entrenched the conditions for physical and sexual violence. The breakdown of community-based thinking, intergenerational trauma, economic and political marginalization, the regulation and oppression of our reproductive health, including being sterilized by the government without our consent, the theft of our children, taken to residential schools and put up for adoption without our permission, and ultimately the theft of our very lives. When we begin to understand the colonial legacy and its collateral damage to the minds and bodies of Indigenous women, we can begin to forgive, accept, and heal ourselves from the countless hurtful, damaging ways in which this trauma manifests itself. When we embrace our long-standing inner memory of the richness of our teachings, in those moments we reclaim and honor our ancestors' truth, courage, and resilience. That's what this painting is called. This is Resilient. So you have all these different creators just expressing their experiences and lives, or, you know, writing about the lives of family members and how being an Indigenous person, it's this sort of strange experience because, I mean, there's this idea, unfortunately, there's a lot of negative stereotypes, but also there, you know, like one woman writes about, you know, she's an invisible Indian, and the Invisible Indians is titled that because there's this sort of thing where she writes, "It's strange to me how people always want me to be an authentic Indian. When I say I'm Haudenosaunee, they want me to look a certain way, act a certain way. They're disappointed when what they get is just me. White-faced, red-haired. They spent hundreds of years trying to assimilate my ancestors, trying to create Indians who could blend in like me. But now they don't want me either. I'm not Indian enough. They can't make up their minds. They want buckskin and war paint, drumming, songs and languages they can't understand recorded for them, but with English subtitles, of course. They want educated, well-spoken, but not too smart. Christian, well-behaved, never questioning. They want to learn the history of the people, but not the ones who are here now, waving signs in their faces, asking them for clean drinking water, asking why their women are going missing, asking them why their land is being ruined. They want fantastical stories of the Indians that used to roam this land. They want my culture behind glass in a museum, but they don't want me. I'm not Indian enough. So all these writers, I mean, they're writing from this place of knowing that people expect certain things from Native Americans, and unfortunately, sometimes that's just a costume, or it's just this idea of people who have gone, who were killed long ago, or, displaced from their lands. But of course, that's not the whole story. Native Americans are still alive and still, they've not gone someplace. This isn't a culture that has disappeared. This is, in spite of many, many terrible hardships, Native Americans, they persist. They still are living their lives and struggling to, advocate for each other and themselves. Women in particular, if you're a Native American, you're still struggling on two fronts in terms of you're looking for equality, but you have to contend with racism and sexism. And not just equality, but equity, because there's all this generational trauma that I think, for the most part, I mean, we can recognize it, but when society itself is structured the way it is, unfortunately, there's just, as the average person, you can feel like, well, I don't really know what to do about this, or how to help, how to change the world for the better. But you can certainly start by reading perspectives of people whose lives are different than your own. Learn about their experiences and what they go through, and things that need to improve, things that could change for the better, and how, you can at least start to begin to think about these things. Because I think a lot of us, if you're someone who has the privilege of not having to think about things like racism every day, it's not always top of mind. And so creators like this remind you, hey, keep this in mind, recognize that, yes, even if you're dealing with sexism, racism is also there for many people, and when you have to deal with both, that's a whole different set of experiences. So you can just be conscious of this and enjoy this really beautiful collection, because I think that I bookmarked this painting in particular because I really like it, and I love a collection of poetry and art, and that's what this is. And it explores the history of residential schools and of just growing up having to kind of, for a lot of U.S. history, Native American culture was really stifled. It was not something that was allowed to be expressed or explored. The idea was, oh, this is not something that people want to see, or it was this idea of, fine, out west, maybe there's still Native Americans, but I mean, I'm from Michigan. This is unceded Anishinaabe territory, and there are still many Native American people there. It's not something that's just vanished. And so there's this sort of myth of, well, this is what quote unquote good Indians look like, or there is always this pressure to assimilate, but when that happens, I mean, a lot is lost, a lot of culture and just different knowledge and traditions. When people are forced to give these things up, there's this great loss. So I like, in my lifetime, just seeing and learning more about how Native Americans are able to kind of reclaim this and have more access to their history and stories and land in a really just, I'm reading now Alatsoe, which is by Darcy Little Badger. I started it last year and book talked it here. And it's just this really interesting story of an alternate reality in which this main character is living, and her heritage being Apache, Lipan Apache. It's a big part of the story, and how different things, just how her life is shaped by this, and the way her heritage is just such a powerful, positive force in her life, having this and having family traditions that she can learn. So if you want to check out this book, again, it is on Libby. I know, depending on what kind of e-reader you have, I'm not sure how the images will show up on there, but I think it's worth checking out, giving it a try. Next, this is one of the books that was hidden from me because of the accidental settings change I made, and this is What If 2. So, I love the first What If book by Randall Munroe. I'm book talking it now for 7th grade this week and next, and it is additional. The first book is Serious Scientific Answers to Absurd Hypothetical Questions, and this is additional answers to these questions that people send to the author. And there's so many. There are just, all of these are, for the most part, very funny or outlandish questions that do have real scientific answers. So for example, can all the world's bananas fit inside all of the world's churches? And the person writing this in says, my friends have had this argument for a little over 10 years now. The answer is yes. We can do this math. At any given time, there's not so many bananas in the world that they would fill up all the world's churches. And, I mean, some things here are, like, there's a dinosaur on the cover, and that's, we'll get into that. Basically, if a T-Rex were released in New York City, how many humans per day would it need to consume to get its needed calorie intake? And what you should know about T-Rex, been extinct many, many millions of years, but we know, based on its size, like it weighed about as much as an elephant. And this might seem kind of off, you know, you think elephants, they're the same size as like cars or trucks, maybe that's in your head. But Jurassic Park, you know, you can see that, okay, this dinosaur is bigger than this car. Well, I mean, yeah, elephants are too. They're also quite large. I think if you're not around elephants a lot, you sort of underestimate their size. The thing about a dinosaur, basically T-Rex seemed to, like our best guess for this, for metabolism, it probably ate around 40,000 calories per day. So if dinosaurs had metabolism similar to today's mammals, they'd eat a lot more than 40,000 calories each day. Dinosaurs, though, they were warm-blooded, more so than like modern snakes and lizards. Probably they had metabolisms that resembled like a Komodo dragon, you know, more so than an elephant or a tiger. So for example, like an elephant needs a certain amount of food every day, and it can't just like eat in advance. With a Komodo dragon or something, you know, like a predatory reptile, they can hunt food and get a lot of calories and maybe not have to eat every day. That's how that works. So what we know is, thanks to Ryan North, author of Dinosaur Comics, an 80-kilogram human contains about 110,000 calories of energy. So a T-Rex would need to consume a human every 2 days or so. So, you know, not bad. We could also, if we wanted to not have humans just being eaten by dinosaurs, there's another thing, there's another option. And the option for that is 39,000 McDonald's restaurants worldwide sell something like 18 billion hamburger patties per year, for an average of 1,250 burgers per restaurant per day. So those 1,250 burgers contain about 600,000 calories, which means that each T-Rex only needs to eat about 80 hamburgers per day to survive. And one McDonald's could support more than a dozen Tyrannosaurs on hamburgers alone. So that's good to know. And I will say, I've said this wrong in some class periods. I've thought like, oh yeah, it'd be like X number of people per day. Well, no, it would really just be like a person every other day. And this means, I mean, so New York City, what we know is, like, if, right now, just if New York City suddenly, right now, had T-Rex, if Tyrannosaurus suddenly appeared there, the population of New York City could support a population of about 350 Tyrannosaurs. And, I mean, maybe we don't want that many people being eaten by dinosaurs, but the world we live in is such that if they were contained, this feels like the kind of thing that wouldn't even make the news after about a month. Like, we'd adjust. It'd be like, well, I guess everybody needs to move out of New York City, or, you know, move out of Brooklyn. Like in the comic, the rent is so high and everyone is getting eaten by Tyrannosaurs. So also in this book gets into the question, is it possible to make a homemade jetpack? And the answer is yes. It's pretty easy to make a jetpack that works once. Twice or more is harder. In the previous book, the question is, could you make a jetpack out of machine guns? Sure, you absolutely could, but it would shoot your legs off and kill you. So the harder thing, like making a jetpack, yeah, relatively easy. Making a jetpack that lands and doesn't kill people around you, that's a lot harder. I will say, I'm listening to the audiobook as well, which is a real treat because Will Wheaton reads it and he does a great job. It's really just a lot of fun to have a book like this read to you by somebody, you know, who's entertained and interested in the science. let's find, I know I marked another page, and here it is. Something that is kind of, I mean, there's lots of sort of reassuring, almost, reassuring sort of answers to questions here. Very weird questions that, for the most part, you don't have to worry about. One thing, if every country's airspace extended up forever, which country would own the largest percentage of the galaxy at any given time? And the answer is, congratulations to Australia, new rulers of the galaxy. Now, even in the northern hemisphere, basically most of the Milky Way is kind of like, it's if you go to the southern hemisphere, you're pointing at the main part of our galaxy. But northern hemisphere, we've got some too. Southern hemisphere's got most of the galaxy out there in that direction. But northern hemisphere, what we know about this is the star 47 Ursae Majoris has at least 3 planets and probably more. If any of those planets have life on them, then once a day all that life passes through the United States. That means that there's a period of a few minutes each day where any murders on those planets technically happen in New Jersey, in terms of like if we had jurisdiction over other planets, which thankfully we don't. Thankfully we do not need to worry about this. Another question, if, you know, all plastic, as plastic is made from oil and oil is made from dead dinosaurs, how much actual real dinosaur is there in a plastic dinosaur? Well, the answer is not that much, depending on where the oil comes from. Like fossil fuel, most fossil fuel technically comes from like plankton and algae blooms, from, you know, these small creatures that lived and died millions, perhaps billions of years ago. But the interesting thing about the water cycle is, I mean, all water in the ocean has at some point been part of a dinosaur. So when this water is used in photosynthesis, molecules from it become part of the fats and carbohydrates in the food chain. But a lot more of that water is in your body right now, in the form of water. In other words, your plastic toy contains a lot less dinosaur than you do. So we have like a lovely little drawing here, shows the plastic dinosaur, and that's some dinosaur, and then human is more dinosaur, and then bird is all dinosaur. So this book is a lot of fun. I highly recommend it if you like science, if you like weird answers to weird science questions like this. And I just, oh gosh. I mean, what if you were hanging onto a helicopter blade by your hands and then someone turned it on? You wouldn't be able to hold on for long, is the answer to that. At what point in human history were there too many English books to be able to read them all in one lifetime? Happened a while ago. Happened something like, let's see, was it 1075? I think it was like 1500s. So it's been a few centuries. Yeah, sometime in the late 1500s, we passed this threshold. So, I mean, all of these, it's worth just kind of, even if you flip through, or, you know, if you read the ebook, I don't think the audio is available through Libby yet, but you can just kind of flip around and you can read it straight through, or you can just kind of look at what answers interest you. That's fun. This was an interesting money one. What if Aubin Pan lost their 2014 lawsuit and had to pay the plaintiff $2 undecillion? Undecillion? I've heard this word said, but I still might be saying it wrong. Basically, this is how much money there is in the world. And then this number at the bottom is how much the economic value of all goods and services produced by humanity since we first evolved. That is a great deal smaller than the number that was involved in this lawsuit, which it didn't succeed, which is good because that much money does not exist and probably never will exist before the heat death of the universe, because it's such a huge, huge, massive number. Oh, okay. This is a fun game of catch, potentially. Is there any way to fire a gun so that the bullet flies through the air and then can safely be caught by hand? For example, the shooter is at sea level and the catcher is up on a mountain at the extreme range of the gun. So, I mean, the drawing here gets into, don't do this. Don't ever do this. Don't shoot a gun. For example, at a hot air balloon. That would be one way to accomplish this, but don't do that. In fact, there's a handy-dandy list here of things you should not do. So the updated list includes eat Tide Pods, walk on stilts in a thunderstorm, set off fireworks at a gas station, feed your cat treats that are the exact shape and texture of a human hand, lean over a geyser vent and try to look down into it, also in this book. And finally, new, fly a hot air balloon through a firing range. Don't do that. So, Yeah, good times and lots of just different science information about complicated things, but also simpler subjects, like how tall can a swing set be while still being powered by a human pumping their legs? Is it possible to build a swing set tall enough to launch the rider into space if they jump at the right time, assuming the human has enough energy, which, this person's 5-year-old seems to have? And the weird thing about swings is no, they're actually about the optimal height, right as they are now, if you see playground swings, much higher, and you start to lose a lot of efficiency. Even if you're pumping your legs and you're moving all the time, you're still going to be met with more and more resistance. Like, as you get higher, the bigger the swing gets, the harder it becomes to swing, as you can maybe guess. So, yeah, check this one out. And, some of this math, how many people would it take to actually build Rome in a day? If the Earth were a massive eye, just the whole planet is an eyeball, how far could it see? And, what if Mercury, the planet, were entirely made out of mercury, the element? Well, this would be fine with most elements, but others not so much. Some of this, potentially, depending on the planet and its makeup, could cause just the whole solar system to be destroyed, killing everyone. But for the most part, it's good that these questions are hypothetical, because a lot of them end with that. The answer being, well, if we did this, if this were possible, it would just, kill everybody on the planet. So we'll just not. We won't plan to do that. And again, both of these books are available through Libby, so you can check them out whenever you might like, whenever they are available. I've done 3 book talks today, so words are hard. This one, What If 2, is pretty new. Not Your Princess came out in 2017, so probably there's less of a wait on that. But yeah, What If 2, you may have to wait a little while because it is a newish book. I think it came out in September. And just one other thing, if you want to stop by the Southwest branch tonight at 6 p.m., we have Marvel trivia. So if you want to play that, we're just playing for fun and bragging rights. But there may be some manner of prize, perhaps, so check that out. And thank you for watching. I will see you again next week.